Well, for more on the SCO Summit, I'm joined by Sourabh Gupta, a senior Asia-Pacific International Relations Policy Specialist at the Institute for China-America Studies. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
So as we look at the various stages of economic development that these countries are involved in, the ones at the summit, what are they all really hoping to get out of this?
I think what they're trying to get out of this is align their development strategies. There is the Belt and Road, and there is a lot of money, and not just money, there's expertise coming and a lot of hard and soft infrastructure being built. The Eurasian countries have their own Eurasian Economic Union out there, or something on those lines. And the idea is just to ensure that there's harmony between the development strategies that they're doing as a group and as individual countries, so that all these parties can be integrated and interdependent, which is for the better of them, all of them.
So give us an understanding of how China's relationship with these Central Asian countries has really developed, especially since China began opening up its economy about 40 years ago.
Yes, and indeed, as you mentioned, I mean, China is the biggest investor in these countries, the biggest investor, and it far overshadows Russia in this regard. But China has been very wise and astute. It understands this is Russia's backyard, and therefore, under the aegis of the SCO is not a collective security organization. In terms of collective security, there is something called the CSTO, Collective Security Treaty Organization, where Russia makes the rules and the Central Asian countries work with Russia. So it has been very careful not to strategically intrude into Russia's backyard while trying to maintain as dense an economic agenda as possible with these countries in Central Asia, all of which, including Russia, seek to develop themselves and get richer. And of course, China's opening up has itself made China a kind of a leader in certain areas, technology-wise, as well as in a variety of transport and connectivity projects related-wise. And so, again, it's about aligning development interests between that part of the world, between neighbors in Central Asia and China.
So, and of course, we know that China is engaged in its own trade standoff with the US. Russia is at the mercy of Western sanctions. How key is the China-Russia relationship to really opening up the region to further development?
It has always been key, I would say, for the SCO, because without a harmonious China-Russia relationship in the SCO, without a harmonious bilateral relationship, the SCO relationships would have suffered. So it's important from that perspective. China and Russia are obviously very important players and very important development partners for each of the SCO countries, but it's also important from the perspective that the SCO is, in a way, a microcosm of the United Nations, per se, in some ways. I mean, you have so many civilizations out there now, and soon, hopefully down the line, one day, Iran and Turkey out there. Eurasia will look a lot like the United Nations, and it'll face many of those challenges of the United Nations. They're facing terrorism, separatism, extremism, proliferation of weapons of mass destruction, organized crime, drug trafficking. So in this respect, it's very important that the two leading powers, leading lights of the SCO see eye to eye, and that becomes a useful platform then for all the countries to come on the same table and cooperate.
And obviously Russia gets most of the spotlight given the size of its economy. What about other countries in the region? How have they benefited from their relationship with China? And especially as we look at the Belt and Road, what are they hoping to get out of it?
Oh, it's to get richer, to build state capacity, first of all, and then just have the infrastructure and the wherewithal to get richer. A lot of these countries, not a lot, all of them are landlocked countries. They depend on their neighbors to get access to external markets. So it's important to have good relations with these countries. But China has shown how rapidly one can really become from a very poor developing country to a very advanced developing country on the cusp of becoming a developed country soon. And many of these countries appreciate and value that China has been able to do it, and why not them? And therefore, they look at China both as a kind of a leading light as well as a provider of expertise. And many of these countries are rich in natural resources, so they see that it's a natural fit with China, which is looking also for natural resources from this part of the world.
And just quickly, if you had to address any sort of particular headwind or challenge that you think may be a potential cause for friction between China and the rest of these Central Asian countries, what would that be?
The area, I don't think I would frame it as a point of friction, but I think all of these countries have a real, have real apprehensions of how the situation in Afghanistan is playing itself out. The Taliban really seem to be ruling the roost gradually every day. They're trying to, these countries are trying to socialize the Taliban in some way, form, or shape in the process, by way of a peace process, but there's always fears of what could radiate out of Afghanistan, can find roots in some of these Central Asian countries, which itself are trying to build state capacity,
right,
and thereafter, and just generally have become a real issue for the neighborhood. And of course, I mean, we have issues where, you know, in Xinjiang, there is a disenchanted minority out there. They have brethren across the boundary in Central Asia, and they have been wise, all the countries have been wise to be on the same page and not interfere in internal affairs. But at the same time, the processes need to be leading in a direction where everybody can be at ease and have good friendly ties with each other. And hopefully the countries are all getting on the same page in this regard.
All right, thank you. Always good to have you. Sourabh Gupta there, a Senior Asia-Pacific International Relations Policy Specialist at the Institute for China-America Studies.